Today on Fear and Greed, the Reserve Bank Board meets this week with most economists expecting a rate cut tomorrow afternoon. Why the regional property market is doing better than the capital city property market, and US Vice-President JD Vance delivers a speech that leaves European allies reeling. Plus, households upgrade their internet speeds, helping the NBN bottom line. And China's silver trains for elderly tourists, complete with mahjong and slow dancing. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Monday, the 17th of February, 2025. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Adam Lang.
Good morning, Michael.
Adam, the main story this morning, it is, of course, rate cut week, with the Reserve Bank Board meeting today and tomorrow to deliberate on whether Australians need their first interest rate cut since November 2020. The consensus among market economists, including the chief economists of the big four banks, there's a lot of people saying this, is that rates will fall. And all this is happening as the local share market in the midst of earnings season is trading around record levels.
Yeah, Michael, the evidence for a rate cut is growing. Underlying inflation, which takes out the volatile items, is at 3.2% per year and indicating to head lower. The labour market still remains strong, but wage growth has come off the boil a bit, and that is lessening expectations of the inflationary effects from higher wage costs. Now, the economy itself, it's pretty weak, and that's at best, with the latest growth figures suggesting the economy is expanding at less than 1%. And this was backed up by Commonwealth Bank boss Matt Comyn last week, who said credit card and debit card data shows softness in parts of the economy.
Adam, as we said, there are a lot of people, a lot of economists forecasting a rate cut tomorrow, but it would be wrong to say that it's a done deal because we've got services inflation still too high in Australia, so too some parts of housing. Last week, we had US inflation figures ticking up again, demonstrating that the inflation... Do we go the inflation genie isn't back in the bottle?
Sure.
The inflation dragon has not yet been slain? I don't know. There are so many options here. And also, this is the last meeting of the RBA board as it is. After tomorrow, it splits into two, including one interest rate setting board, and that might just play into the decision. All in all, people think that there is going to be an interest rate cut tomorrow, but I wouldn't bet my life on it.
No, but it might be the announcement that almost stops the nation, Michael. I reckon Prime Minister Anthony Albanese would be holding his breath on this one. With an election due by the middle of May, a rate cut would be politically helpful, shall we say? And you mentioned the local share market. It seems investors are looking for a rate cut too, which would help earnings. We are in the middle of the December half profit reporting season, and there have been some good results from the likes of Commonwealth Bank and JB Hi-Fi. But any company that disappoints has been punished. Examples from just last week were IAG and Pro Medicus.
Yeah, and Adam, we've got two interviews coming up after the show. One of them is, of course, Fear and Greed, the week ahead, featuring our resident economist, Stephen Koukoulas, who is very, very, very excited about this week. And there is a whole lot of additional data coming out after the Reserve Bank Board meets as well, which just adds a whole nother layer of complication. So have a listen to Stephen. He's coming up after this. And then we've got an interview with Lachlan Holloway, who is the equity market strategist at Morningstar. He is talking about the three trends of reporting season so far, what we've learned from the first kind of week and a bit, and also then what to expect coming up, and talks about a whole lot of companies that they're really keeping their eye on. Some great listening coming up after the show. Local markets, where did things finish up on Friday?
The S&P ASX 200 finished last week at another record high, Michael, up 0.2% on Friday to 8,556 points. It was much higher early in the day with a new intraday record set as well. And it was a day for records with Commonwealth Bank's share price hitting a high during the day. But the bank ended up closing down 0.5% after share traders banked some of those gains. The worst performers were two companies that both reported results. That's AMP and Cochlear. The best performance was from Sigma Healthcare, fresh from its merger with Chemist Warehouse. The new pharmaceutical giant rose almost 7%, and that's just on Friday.
I know this is all very serious, Adam, but can I tell you there is some exciting news, and this is related to international markets, so I think I can be excused for kind of just wedging it in here. Exciting news for coffee lovers. Coffee prices are likely to have peaked as demand starts to drop and supplies replenish, and that's largely thanks to favourable weather and new producers stepping up their output of beans. Arabica coffee prices have been at an all-time high, according to Citi. but they've had better weather patterns in Brazil, which is a major producer. That is helping things. Other countries upping exports. So the much feared $6 flat white, which Sean and I have discussed on this program many, many times. It's like it is just this thing that's hovering over the horizon, a big dark cloud. It's not likely to happen just yet.
Coffee prices are a matter of grave concern here at Fear and Greed House, Michael, as you know. And a quick mention of the gold prices too. Still very high, but they dipped back below the US $2,900 mark over the weekend. The Aussie dollar is currently buying around 63.5 US cents.
Adam, we still have plenty more to come. We are talking auction results. There's been a lot happening in federal politics over the weekend, and that stunning speech by JD Vance to Europe as well, that's having quite a few repercussions. Plenty more to come. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Adam, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get the sense that we are getting close to an election. Opposition
what
leader.
Gives it away?
Well, I'll tell you, you turn on the TV over the weekend and you see a politician, don't you? And opposition leader Peter Dutton was one of those out there over the weekend talking to us, threatening to break up the country's big insurers, claiming a lack of competition in the market is making policies more expensive for consumers. He has previously talked about the potential to break up the big supermarket chains over competition concerns. The coalition is, of course, promising to create further divestiture powers. And yesterday, Peter Dutton was telling Sky News that, quote, we need depth in the insurance pool and we need to make sure that we are not being ripped off by insurance companies. So I suspect we'll be hearing a lot about this one. And it's an interesting battle for the coalition to be having with big business.
Yeah, Michael, and alongside that insurance pool, as you call it, also in federal politics, the government has reached a deal to send violent non-citizen criminals to Nauru. A landmark High Court ruling in 2023 determined that 220 people who had broken laws and failed the character test but couldn't be resettled in their home nation could not be held indefinitely. Labor has been searching for a solution, saying it would pay third-party countries to take some of those affected by the ruling. The first 3 ex-detainees, and that includes 1 murderer, will now be sent to Nauru within weeks, having been granted a 30-year visa by the island nation. The government hopes that more will then follow.
Adam, a quick look at auction results over the weekend. Preliminary clearance rates. We had in Sydney more than 76%, good result in Sydney. Melbourne 70%, Perth and Canberra both had 60%. Adelaide a touch higher, Brisbane a touch lower. It would be an interesting weekend, wouldn't it, to be holding an auction just a couple of days out from an interest rate decision. You don't know whether it's going to have a positive effect or a negative effect. It all just depends on what is actually decided tomorrow.
Yeah, and Michael, particularly with Melbourne, following that massive, reported record result in Kunak of $150 million, didn't dent the sales on that one.
Yeah, wasn't that extraordinary? Now, it is a bit early to tell how the capital city housing market is going to perform this year, knowing it wasn't so flash last year, at least in Sydney, Melbourne, Hobart and Canberra, which is a fairly sizable chunk of the country.
Yeah.
But, Adam, the regional property market is doing pretty well. In the 3 months to the end of January, almost 3/4 of suburbs in regional Australia reported house price rises. In the capital cities, almost half recorded declines.
Yeah, 2 very distinct stories, Michael. The regions are showing much more resilience, and this is according to CoreLogic data. There are a few reasons for this. Homes in regional Australia are cheaper to begin with, so affordability is greater. Also, the competition in towns and small cities in the auction market is not as hot. CoreLogic economist Caitlin Ezzi also talks about a second wind in regional internal migration, and that is for twofold reasons. More people are moving away from the capital cities and people in the regions are staying there. She says hybrid working and working from home are here to stay, and people are prioritising lifestyle over work. As a result, demand levels in the regions have settled at a point higher than pre-COVID levels.
And of course, for all that work from home, Adam, you need good internet, which is
it's an essential.
What a segue into this next story. Demand for higher internet speeds. It's not even a clunky segue. It is very, very,
elegant.
Very much. It is firmly linked because people working from home, they need higher speeds, and that demand for higher speed has lifted NBN Co's half-year earnings. And the government-owned telco says that it is on track to meet all its key performance targets. For the 6 months to December, revenue was higher, pre-tax profit was up 7%. The results reflect a jump in revenue from, of course, the residential market, where people are increasingly prepared to pay higher prices for faster speed.
It's more and more regarded as an essential, I think, Michael. Chief Executive Ellie Sweeney said about 8.62 million premises had connected to the NBN network by the end of December, with 28% connected to plans offering wholesale download speeds of 100 megabits per second and above. NBN is the wholesaler that sells fibre optic cable to retailers. She said Australians are fast adopters of technology, and the NBN is carrying more than 80% of daily traffic.
Adam, there's more evidence today of Australian companies going soft on climate targets. Macquarie Group is quitting the world's biggest climate banking alliance. That is the first major Australian financial institution to do so since the return of Donald Trump to the White House.
Yeah, Michael, Macquarie said it will leave the Net Zero Banking Alliance following the lead of other global banks, including JP Morgan, Citi and Bank of America. Australia's big banks are all part of that alliance, which pushes members to cut net emissions to zero to limit the effects of climate change. We'll have to wait and see whether they stick with this alliance.
The Australian ETF industry pushed past $250 billion in funds under management last month on the back of record inflows and positive market performance.
Yeah, Michael, January is normally a quieter month for the Australian exchange-traded fund industry, but January 2025 was a different story as 4.6 billion of net inflows beat the prior record by over $600 million. Over the last 12 months, the Australian ETF industry has grown by 35.9%, or that is $79.9 billion. Gold miner exposures, including the BetaShares Global Miners ETF, were the highest performing funds in January, with the fund returning 13.96%. January 2025 was also a strong month for international equities products.
All right, turning to international news now, Adam, and US Vice-President JD Vance has really stunned Europe with a speech that criticised leaders for undermining democratic values and free speech. So leaders were gathered in Munich and they were expecting to hear the Trump administration's plans for ending the war in Ukraine and for dealing with the threat of Russia more broadly. But instead, Vice President Vance got up there and he argued that Europe's primary threat is in fact internal, stemming from a retreat from fundamental values rather than external actors like Russia or like China. He called on Germany in particular, which is a little bit awkward because Germany was hosting this particular event, to drop their objections to working with a party that has often used banned Nazi slogans, saying, quote, "There is no room for firewalls." In response, you had German Chancellor Olaf Scholz defending his stance against the far right and said his country will not accept people who intervene in our democracy.
Yeah, Michael, also in Europe, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has rejected a proposal from the White House that the US be given 50% of the Ukraine's rare earth minerals. The agreement was apparently intended as a way for Ukraine to pay back the weapons and aid packages that the US had provided since Russia invaded the country in 2022. President Zelensky told reporters that the deal wasn't in the sovereign interests of Ukraine, with Reuters reporting that it didn't contain security provisions that Ukraine required.
I mentioned this story at the top of the show, Adam. China will launch a network of silver trains for elderly tourists. Now, I'm assuming that this actually means that they are trains that are
painted?
Well, no,
Coloured?
just targeting elderly passengers as opposed to actually silver. I had an image of kind of the what was the movie with the silver train? Really old movie.
Yes, with Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor.
Yes.
Something Express, was it the...
It's something in it's got silver. You know what? It'll come to me. Give me a minute. And anyway, these trains, the goal is to unleash the spending power of one of the world's fastest aging populations. An official action plan released this week outlined the need for trains to be outfitted with medical and old age services. According to the Financial Times, by 2027, a network of such trains could cover the entire country.
Now, Michael, I'm not indicating that I'm an early buyer of this service, but I do love going on trains. China's ageing population poses a profound long-term challenge to the world's second largest economy. 20% of the population is over 60 years of age. Authorities said the silver tourist trains were an important part of promoting service consumption. The government says the silver economy is worth around US $1 trillion annually. China's retirement age is also among the earliest in the world, 60 for men and 55 for women, though policymakers last year outlined plans to raise it gradually. State-backed broadcaster CCTV is running segments showing elderly passengers on trains dancing and playing mahjong.
The silver streak.
Late 70s, Michael?
Yeah, classic.
Fine work by two excellent comedians.
Oh, that is a great movie. I mean, it's a novel idea, this whole thing, isn't it? Like, it's just, I mean, not the silver streak. That's kind of irrelevant.
I'm sorry, Michael, you can't go. You're too young. You're not allowed yet.
I reckon I'd be.
You'll just have to wait.
I would do trivia. I'd do bingo.
You'd be hosting it.
Oh, it would be fantastic. It would be great. Anyway, bring them out here. Up next is the week ahead, featuring our resident economist, Stephen Koukoulas. Then the Fear and Greed daily interview with Lachlan Holloway from Morningstar. Plenty of good listening coming up in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is also where you sign up for our free weekly newsletter coming out on Wednesday. So get on that one today. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Monday, the 17th of February, 2025. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.